Hey, it's Vince Del Monte. Just got off the Resilient Minds podcast with Eric Bounce, and it was absolutely epic. We are going to teach you how to go the distance and how to execute on your vision so that you achieve your dream life without sacrificing your family, your faith, and your fitness in the process.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Resilient Minds podcast. You guys, I'm sitting here with a dear friend of mine. He's been a mentor of mine. He's supported me in my journey, and I'm just grateful to have him, as always. Vince, welcome, bro. It's good to have you.
Hey, what's going on, man? Great to see you, Eric. You're always smiling, man. That's what I love about you. You're always smiling. Since the first day we spoke on the DM, I could just sense your energy right through the DM all the way into our first call. And I've just watched you transform over the last year or two. And yeah, every time I talk to you, just beaming with more light. It's great to be around in a world that has so much darkness.
Appreciate you, Vince. You've always been there, and you've always, helped me shed that light, even when there were so many times of uncertainty. And, for those of you that don't know Vince, Vince is a best-selling author. He's, former WBFF pro fitness model, online fitness business coach who's been helping thousands of people and other fit professionals really tap into their own booming fitness business. He's turned his life story into his own thriving seven-figure coaching business. And for the past 12 years, he's helped thousands of men transform their physique through his coaching and online programs while founding the M5 movement, where he teaches men how to maximize it all. The 5 M's of muscle manhood, right? Or 5 M's of manhood: muscle, mindset, money, mission, and marriage, which is amazing. You have a tremendous relationship with Flavia, your beloved, and it's always amazing to watch. Vince has been the founder of both his 6-figure coach program, and where he teaches beginner fitness entrepreneurs how to get their first 10K in 100 days, and his signature 7-figure mastermind program in a short time, which I've been, very blessed and lucky to, come and spend some time with you in your home. We've, got into the famous good old pen down there where you have all these, amazing workouts. And then, of course, spending time in Vancouver at one of your masterminds, bro, where, you brought the fire, brought the expertise, brought the brilliance. Were definitely able to give me some tremendous insights of how I can pivot and change things around. That was like almost 2 years ago now. Hey, wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. And actually it was last May. So it would have been about a year and 4 months ago.
Wow.
16 months to be exact. Yep.
How time flies, dude.
No kidding. Yeah. 16 months. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
So no, it's okay. So, I'm super, again, I just want to say, it's fascinating how things change so fast. We're able to always pivot and change things. And I remember just before that, or just after that event, I was heading out to Australia for one of Tony's events. And I was super excited about it, freaking out. And you were like, dude, just go all in, go all in. I remember it. It was it was so funny because I was freaking out. That was still at the beginning, very early in my journey. And,
that was a big investment. Wasn't that $80,000 or something?
Yeah, it was 85. It was 85,000.
Yeah, that's a big amount of money, right? You could put $85,000 into a lot of different things, right? But, you always have to look at something from the standpoint of, is there an ROI? If the value exceeds the price, then yes, of course, you still have to come up with the money and maybe you have to pay it off as you go. There's, different situations, obviously. But that's what I tell everybody, if the value exceeds the price, what does it matter what the price is?
Absolutely. And that really is it's been tenfold that return on investment, just being in proximity and
that's
having the opportunity.
That's what's interesting. People, often said to me, I can't believe you spent 50 grand on joining the Empire Mastermind. That's crazy. I'm like, well, it's also, you want to hear something even crazier? I 5X that investment in one day, 5 days after joining. Yeah. So people look at things from a cost, right? If you told people how much you made back from that 85K, now it doesn't sound so crazy. So, the difference between, wealthy people and I would say, the middle class mindset, people struggling, is they see these things from the lens of a cost, as something
Yeah.
being taken from them. And they don't look at them from the lens of a return, or the lens of what could this possibly cause in my life? And what could this eliminate from my life, in terms of stress and struggle? And it could return freedom and time. So you really, it takes faith though, because there's
Absolutely.
nothing in life that's guaranteed, right? Tony's got a great track record. I'm sure a lot of people said the same thing. I 10x my investment there, but like, if he could guarantee that, then, he'd be, a zillionaire, right? So there's still a level of faith that you still have to have, because you have to have belief in yourself that you're going to action the program, right? Like, people think that when you join a coaching program, all of a sudden, like, the coach is just going to tell you what to do and you make all this money. It doesn't work like that. Right. Even Tony, right. Even the top guys in the world, even Brandon Bouchard and Grant Cardone and all the big names, like, just because you pay them, it doesn't mean you're going to make any money. You still have to action the program, and you still have to test everything they give you. And I think a lot of people that join coaching programs don't understand that we don't actually have this all figured out. It's like hiring a personal trainer to get you ready for a show. There's not one macro formula that gets you shredded. There's not one cardio plan that gets everyone shredded. There's not one workout program that gets everyone shredded. You have to make changes, right? Everything is a test. I say marketing is just a fancy 9-letter word for test. So yeah, we'll tell you what to start with, what to do next, but you have to be involved in the process, or else we're just spitting theory.
It's that constant, never-ending improvement of like always iterating. And I love how you talked about like the change in the process of, instead of like focusing on the investment of cost, it's like, instead of thinking in that incremental mindset, what about thinking in the exponential of like the big yield of what's going to come as a result of like longevity and implementing for a long time? Because that test and that iteration is going to create massive consistency in your own life, but also in the marketplace. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's, you got to see these investments as like, these aren't one-time events, right? Yeah. This is a way of life, right? Yeah. It's maximize every investment, squeeze as much out of it as possible, right? Get what you need for where you're at now. Because as you build, the problems change, right? So, it's actually funny. I was just sharing this with our head coach, Corby, and I was telling him, I'm only ready to implement some of the stuff I learned in Empire 2 years ago right now. Like, he taught me stuff. I heard it. I wrote it down in my notebook, but I wasn't ready to implement it because there wasn't other things built before. It's like building a bridge, right? You have to build it, from one side to the other, right? And you lay certain bricks in a certain order. I think that's where people get really caught up. They don't realize, like, they're looking for these shortcuts, and they realize that you're the shortcut, man. I'm not the shortcut. They think hiring a coach is a shortcut. No. I'm going to tell you what to do, but you're the shortcut, because you're going to implement it, and then you're going to bring back feedback. We're going to see, how did it go? Oh, you crushed it? Oh, keep doing that. Oh, it didn't work at all? Well, let's take a look at what you did and how you did it, right? Just like in the gym, you ask somebody to start doing deadlifts, and the person says, oh, all this is doing is hurting my back, when the deadlifts were intended to develop the guy's glutes. And then the trainer says, well, let's take a look at how you're doing those deadlifts. Because I've got clients of mine that are getting nice round butts using the deadlifts. And the client watches the student and says, oh, I see the problem. Your knees are going forward. I didn't tell you to do them that way. And the client's like, oh, there's nothing wrong with deadlift. It's how you do the deadlifts. And I think that's where a lot of people get jaded by this industry. They come in with this expectation that this new fancy widget's going to make them money, and it doesn't, but it's because they weren't involved in the process. They didn't fully action the technique. They didn't get feedback around it. They didn't do it better, and they just gave up too early. They gave up too early on the tactic or the strategy or whatever they were at, And then they repeat this process for, and I've seen people do it for like literally a decade. They're just bouncing from thing to thing. So, and that's what separates the men from the boys, right?
Yeah. And this is something where I think that it is perfect exactly for the audience or anybody that's listening live or back now, the recording, because, the resilient minds here and the way that we really distinguish ourselves, and what I believe is through our experience, what I call our X factor. And, it's how we consistently evolve through those experiences to contribute and deliver our why into the world, our big why factor. And you touched on testing and iterating and, separate the men from the boys, the girls from the women, and really making that key distinction that we're willing to kind of change our approach. If something doesn't work, we're going to come back to the drawing board, change our approach. And that really what I define as like resilience, like really to be in the ebb and flow of life. And no matter what, we're still going to get back up. So maybe I'd love to hear, because I think there's, you have a really strong, and you touched on faith, right? Faith is a key thing that has always been really pivotal for me. And I know for you, absolutely same thing. And when you've been through these experiences of life, and I know, again, you've had these ebbs and flows of life, Vince, what has been maybe a defining moment in your experience of life, in your X factor, that has really helped you understand, wow, this is what I realized that I needed to do, and my why just kind of like really was the driving force because of it?
Well, I think about things that I don't want to do. Like, get good at data. Last summer, business is doing great. I joined the $100 million mastermind. Joel was starting to ask me some tough questions, uncomfortable questions around like, why aren't you here though? I'm like, he started asking me questions around numbers, which I hate. Right. I've just, built multiple 7-figure fitness businesses just off of hustle and just lots of passion and just loving to influence people and creating offers and just selling. But to scale something to, that kind of level, 100 million level, you need numbers. You need to know your numbers. Right. And I'm like, oh man, I knew you were going to bring this up. And I'm like, okay, but when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Yeah. So that's when I was ready. I'm like, hey, I'm going to stay at the same level probably the rest of my life, because the thing that's constraining our revenue is having visibility around our numbers, visibility that allows us to make error-free decisions with confidence. And I just never done the hard work. So I didn't have a data analysis. So that took time. And we found the right guy now. And this guy's phenomenal. He now provides us the visibility that we need. And he's a full-time data analysis. If there's any questions around numbers, we ask him, Richard Seabrook, how do we answer this? What's the answer to this question? All right. And then we need the spreadsheets. All right. And then we have to make sure that everything's tracking properly. Now I need to find somebody to make sure the tech is all set up properly. This is not stuff that's in my zone of genius, but it's stuff that my why helped get me through. Knowing that I want to have bigger impact, I want to reach further people. I said, hey, listen, if I want this business to expand, if I want to continue to reach more people to hear my story, then this is the only way through. I have to go right through it. There's no way around it, right? I was in what you call the valley of despair. And the only way through the valley of despair is to go right through the mud.
Yeah.
There's no like dodging it. So that's an example. And a lot of the examples I would give you would be around the same theme of learning skill sets that maybe it's either learning a new skill set. For instance, another example would be learning how to communicate more frequently, having more regular cadences of communication with key team members, trusting my team members more, using the words "you decide" more often. Normally it would be Vince making the decisions 90% of the time. And I realized that to get to the next level, I should be making decisions only 10% of the time. So that was really uncomfortable to be able to you guys decide. Okay, I love that idea. You guys decide. You guys decide. So a leader, I've had to learn. Again, I had to get out of my comfort zones and learn different skills, like how to communicate, how to run team meetings, how to let go and trust people. All right, allow to let things break and to let things fall apart, but with the greater good in mind that this person needs to fail in order for them to take over this role, or I'm going to continue doing it and I'm going to continue stressing my family out, and we're going to be here when I'm 50.
Yeah.
So, how to answer your question, it was my why. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
It was the why. Like, why are we doing this? It's not just to make a couple bucks each year. We really truly want to be the premier fitness business coaching program in the world, and we want to expand to other countries. But the only way we're going to do that is if I go right through this valley of despair and just start to learn this new stuff that's out of my zone of genius, or to find people that can take ownership of these roles and entrust them to do it. So now my team looks very different than it did last year. Like, our two head coaches, Big Frank and Corby. I was actually thinking about this morning before I came on your show. I was going to do a post on this. Don't join a coaching program if the head coaches aren't smarter than the face of the program. Like, I'm proud to say that our two head coaches, the guys you're going to work with now, I've coached Frank, and Frank's on a whole nother level, and Corby's mentored me, and we all have different, obviously skill sets in that. But I'm comfortable saying that. Like, hey, when you come into people like, hey, well, I get to work with you, Vince. I'm like, why would you want to work with me? My two head coaches are smarter than me.
Yeah. You know what? That is key. And I think that there's a different level of ownership and leadership and integration that is given when you can show up that way in terms of a leader, to really provide that type of value and say, like, listen, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I have the smartest team in the room. And now you've created that DNA, that culture inside of your organization to now pass that down. And that trickles down to throughout the rest of the organization, which is the coolest part, man. And that why is what now you get to focus on building the business while they operate and make a massive impact inside of it.
Yeah, you nailed it, because that's what I want to do. That's where I want to spend my time. I want to spend my day recording videos and supporting my students with the trainings that they need, and motivating my team. Like, that's it. Like, those are and then supporting the sales team too. That's all I want to do. Like, I want to go back and just create YouTube videos. Like, that's when I was the most happy. But building something new, you need infrastructure. You need a great program. You need systems. You need structure. And that takes time to build. So that's why my YouTube channel has been on hold for 3 years. I actually just shot a new series that's going to go up starting next week. And we're going to just start rebuilding that channel from ground zero. It's been a dead zone for 3 years, but I wasn't ready to do that. And, the why's always pulling you forward. Like, why I'm doing this. I want more and more people to hear my story, and that it is possible to have a family, and you don't have to sacrifice your faith or your fitness in the process of chasing finances. I think finances are great. I love people that want to build $10 million, $100 million. I think it's fantastic, but not at the expense of losing yourself in the process.
Yes, I love it. And that's something that I know I remember strongly resonating with you, because the big why too behind like what I do, it's like, how can we still, have this massive impact, this tremendous influence, do big things in the world, but have a lifestyle that's congruent. And like, for me, like, barefoot luxury, or like, still being on the beach and being able to not having to think of like, the only way I could do that impact is in, a high-rise corner office, but still being able to have that impact on the beach somewhere, traveling the world regularly. And like I have for the past, 2.5 years, like, that's been so important. And that's the why of like, how can we show what's possible through our actions and our executions? And I think that for me has always been resonant with you, Vince, because we're not the type that are just talking about it. We're out there and executing, which is the coolest part.
Yeah, that's right. That's really awesome.
So several years, you've been on this journey. You've evolved, for your future. You're building this coaching business. What needed to change in your belief systems as you grew, and do you still believe in those same things?
That's a good question, man. No, something that you wouldn't know. This past few months, I've hired a therapist
Yeah,
who's just pretty much been unpacking me in a loving
I love
way.
it.
And one thing that I've learned about myself is that I don't value rest.
Mm,
And I've never placed any really value, any currency on rest. And I have this program. She uses this term program a lot. She said, Vince, you have a program that has served you, but now it's the thing that's holding you back. And
the
this
story.
program is the story. Yeah. So the story is that rest is for lazy people. If you rest, if I see you take a nap in the middle of the day, Eric, my immediate thought would be, this guy's lazy. What a guy. Like, this guy's working, lying on the
It's so
beach in the
funny because
middle
I
of the
did one
day.
yesterday.
I know, but now if I look at it, I wouldn't have that judgment, but I will,
No,
like,
I get it. I get it.
not long ago, I'd be like, what's this guy like always so laid back for? Like, this guy is not serious. So what's happened though is, because I've been successful from driving hard. I'm a driver. I know how to hit the gas. I don't know how to use the brakes. So what happens is the car can go really fast, but you set yourself up to, for a lot of crashes. And essentially what she helped me realize was, like, where there was lack of growth, for one, in my personal relationship with my wife, like, one of the number one things that we both need attention to and improvement on is intimacy. And the reason the intimacy isn't where it needs to be for the marriage to thrive is because we both run these programs for different reasons, that lazy people rest. And what's not celebrated in our home is rest. If Flavia sees me rest, like, coming upstairs after a long day and I'm lying down, she's like, what are you doing? I've been going all day. And if I see her like chilling on the weekend, I'm like, I just worked all week. Like, what are you doing? Like, stuff needs to get done around. So we would both over give to each other. So I was like, okay, I'll come upstairs and not rest. And then guess what happens when you both go all day and you're not rested? When you're supposed to have time together, there's no energy. Like, there's literally no energy for any intimacy. And what she helped us see, and this is what a great question you asked, is like, my new belief is that it isn't my wife's job to ensure I'm rested. And it's not my job to ensure my wife is rested. She needs to take full ownership and obligation of her own rest. And so do I. And the reason that wasn't happening was because we didn't have vulnerability around that conversation. If I said, hey, I'm so tired, like, I got the webinar tonight, like, do you mind if I just take an extra half hour and lie down? I would be afraid to say that. She's like, well, I've been going all day. So what our therapist revealed, and my wife works with her as well, she revealed to both of us, is that neither of you have even created a safe environment to talk about the need for rest. So she's given us some tools. She's first helped us identify this program. She's shown us, like, what she calls the negative waterfall. If this continues, it's actually a really dark exercise. Where will you guys be in 5 years, 10 years, if you're even together, if this continues? And it's like, holy crap. So it's a dark exercise, but it helps you see the consequence of not taking this seriously. And then she goes the opposite way, and she reveals the heaven if you do put this in order, and what you could both create together. So now we're on the same page of why we need rest. How's it going to impact our intimacy, our relationship, our business, our income, our kids, the way our kids grow up? And we're like, wow, I have a whole new perspective on rest. Now, here's the funny thing, Eric, and I'll wrap up here. My mom's been telling me this for the past 20 years. I had to pay a therapist $1,000 an hour to actually, like, listen. So anyways, I just, threw that in there, because sometimes
It's because when you pay for something, you pay attention.
yeah, Yeah, and I don't know what it means. Like when you just roll your eyes at your mom. You're like, Mom, I know you're right, but like it's your mom. Like I'm like, Mom, and then I told my mom. I called her up first. I'm like, Mom, you were right all along, and thank goodness my mom she's a graceful mom, and she says, I know you would one day figure it out.
Your mom is an amazing lady. I've had the blessing of meeting your mom and your
Yeah, you
dad, and
did.
they're amazing humans. So you have tremendous support there, bro. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that there's a lot of resonance in anybody that's listening. Is like, holy cow, how can I be more communicative with my beloved? And I just went through a breakup in Australia with my girlfriend, who also it was very like driven, and going through those experiences was something that was difficult to communicate. And honestly, man, hindsight is 2020. I look back at that as you're talking about, is like, wow, I probably was exactly the same human, like thinking like, oh no, if I'm resting, I'm lazy. Because she was also like really driving her business, and I noticed that I was like meaning to somehow wanting to keep up, or like competing in some way, maybe not like in like wanting to do that, but like behind my subconscious was wanting that, like doing it as a byproduct. And it's fascinating now, like as you think about it, how many of us like really don't take the time to just be vulnerable in those communication skills, those soft skills, as leaders, as like men, as women, as people who just want to relate and have a better relationship. So I really commend you. Thank you for sharing, bro. And that vulnerability is really powerful.
Oh, you're welcome,
So
man. I mean, I'm going through it, right? It's like
uh,
I'm learning, and I don't have this figured out. What I do know is that I need help, and I see the value in getting help. And I was encouraged from other people to get help on this subject matter many, many years ago. I should have. Thank goodness that worse things didn't happen in our marriage, in our relationship, and that. But I just encourage people. Like I talked to somebody about this, and I could tell like you have the exact same problem I do, and they're like, that stuff doesn't that won't work. I'm like, this is exactly what this stuff is designed to help you with. It's like the only thing that will work, and you have to want it, right? You have to want to get help, and you have to like recognize like everyone has behavioral cycles, behavioral patterns, and most people are just not aware of them. And I think that's the good news. Like most people are struggling with the same thing just because they don't have any tools, right? Like I'll give you a simple one on the rest example. When Flavia goes up for a nap, what happened initially was she'd come back downstairs after 10 minutes. And we're like, Flavia, you're supposed to have a rest. I'm like, so like you need a tool. Like, what do you do? She's like, oh, there's too much stuff to do around the house. It's just because you have awareness of it doesn't mean you just fix it overnight. So now we have this, she gave us a tool. And like the tool is the kids have to come up to mommy and pat her on the back after she's come down after an hour and say, good job, mommy, for resting.
I love it.
Like, right. But I never
and it's
thought
like
of
a
that.
reward. It's a reward.
Yeah.
And it definitely gives that feeling of like, yes, I'm allowed to go. It's almost like a thank you for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's something that we celebrate in our home and something that we encourage. Can you imagine I raised my kids on like not valuing rest? Like what would they turn into? Like they would have some great traits, no doubt, but they'd also, grow up with some like really like I guess beliefs that would end up, really hurting their health and their, balance, I guess you would say. Anyways, I'm just like talking like the power of getting help. It's not just to help yourself, but to help like all those around you. And I shared this at our last mastermind, and people are like, oh my gosh, that was like one of the best shares. Like no one ever talks about this. I'm like, I thought I was the only one. Or people private messaging me while we're in the Zoom room and like, I'm going through this right now. I can't believe you're talking about this. I feel like you're speaking just to me right now. And I'm like, I'm just sharing. I'm not preaching. I'm just sharing.
I think that's a powerful tool. Is like we always think that and maybe you could actually touch on this too. Is like so many times in business, people think that they need to work one-on-one with their clients, when in a group setting, it's actually way more empowering when we're just being authentic and vulnerable in this way and transitioning that in a group capacity. It's like, I've been to Tony, and it's like there's 12,000 people in the room, and everybody feels like he's talking to that one person because he's being vulnerable and resonant. And so whenever I talk to people, and actually I was having a conversation the other day, and this executive coach, she deals with CEOs in Silicon Valley. She's like, but they just need me, right? Like they just need me, all one of them. Like just I can only deal with one of them at a time, right?
Yeah.
And it's because yet they're making that story, or she's making that story, that's what they need, where the truth is that the group setting is a lot more powerful. Maybe you could touch on that, how group capacity is really something that can change the dynamic of a business, and scalability as well in a business.
The group coaching aspect.
Yeah.
No, it's another great question, Eric. So, I just had a great podcast with Alex Hermosi, and we talked about this and how they went to, they've gone from 0 to 30 million a year for the last 3 years straight with Gym Launch. And one of the things that he said was like, you need what he calls the one-way play. The one-way play. And when I launched my mastermind, it wasn't like that and I had a lot of retention issues, not because, I didn't know, but the group was so big and there wasn't a clear structure and path because everybody was doing different things. Now we have 4 levels: first 15K, first 50K, first 100K, and the first million. And there's just different strategies and tactics at each of those levels. But when everybody comes in, everybody does the exact same thing, right? Because we've dialed it down. Like nobody needs a custom program, right? Just like in workouts, and the only people that need a custom meal plan are people who are competitors who are trying to compete for their pro cards. The rest of the world just needs a good meal plan and accountability, a good workout program and accountability. So I think you can't scale chaos. All right. You can scale content though. So if you want to scale your coaching program, you need a very dialed in system that's step by step, phase by phase, module by module. It's got to be modulated. We're actually in the middle of reorganizing our members area even more now, just again, to create that stream. Like here's week 1, here's week 2, here's week 3. A business coaching program should be set up just like a meal plan is. Eat this at 9 a.m. Eat this at 11 o'clock. Drink this after your workout. Drink this during your workout. Have this before bed. That's the same way. When you have that in place, you're in a position to scale because you can scale content. All right. And then when you bring people on board, everyone's going through the same process, and the members start to coach each other because they're slightly ahead, pulling the people behind along. And then the coaches are simply supporting the implementation. What's neat in our group now is we have all these micro groups. We've got about 7 members on track for their first 100K month. And there's like 7 of them that just have separate calls together. Then there's another group. There's about 24 people on track for their first 50K month. And there's a couple subgroups within that group. And we have our advanced group, which is anyone who's had more than 15K in 1 month. And we meet every Thursdays. And what we are finding is that you need smaller communities within the group so that people don't get lost. But it works if there's a straight path for everybody. And at each level, there's pretty much just 2 to 3 things max that you're working on, right? So to go from 50K to 80K, there's only 2 things you need to work on. To go from 25K a month to 50K a month, there's only 2 things you need to work on. To go from 0 to 15K a month, there's only 3 things you got to work on. So it's like, oh, this is all I need to be working on. So what you're saying is 100% true. You can scale a high ticket coaching program, but you do need to use the group model, and it can't be reliant on like one single coach. It has to be modulated. And then the head coach is giving the affirmation that, hey guys, this is the right stuff. Let's have our coaches support your execution, because that's where the money is. Are you executing on what, like, why do some people in the group, we had one guy just join our group and he's contracted $86,000 in his first 30 days. He came from another coaching program. He wasn't a complete beginner, that he never was able to get, past 20, 30K a month. And he was in this group for over a year. And it was because when he had his first call with Corby, we told him to do 10 things less. There was like 10 things we told him not to do. And we said, just focus on these 2-3 things. And he's like, oh, I was doing too much. So a part of our job as coaches is to ensure people are only focusing on what actually can move or break the needle, and have them just stop everything else. And that's that requires focus and patience and trust. And that's where the breakthroughs are.
You touched on execution, and I know that that's a big thing for so many people that are struggling out there. They're creative, they have an expertise, and they're always seeking more knowledge. Now, what do you and it's like this constant and never-ending hunger for more knowledge. But it's one thing I always share is like, knowledge is really potential power. It's not power until there's execution involved, and that is one thing that, I think is really important. What are your thoughts on those that are always out there seeking knowledge, but not executing? And for those that might be listening right now, what is something, it's like paralysis by analysis. What's something that, maybe 3 distinctions that they can go do right now, or that you would suggest that they can, have that 2 millimeter shift to just go do these 3 things right now, so that they start building some sort of momentum?
Yeah. I'll give them a question. Like, I'll give them a tactical question.
I love it.
And I think we worked on this. I mean, one of my mentors helped me with this. It's probably the most helpful question you could run. So whenever you're unsure of whether you should do something, simply ask yourself this: if I don't do this, will it prevent me from achieving this outcome? If I don't do this, right? So I'll give you an example. I've wanted to grow my YouTube channel, like, again, for a long time, but not doing YouTube isn't the thing that's constraining my revenue. Does that make sense? I've wanted to blow up my podcast for a long time too, but not doing the podcast is not the thing that's preventing our business from growing. What's preventing our business from growing is scaling our 6-figure coach program on paid traffic and then turning it into an evergreen webinar. So guess where my focus has been for 8 months? One thing. So when I started, I'll give you a story. So I started, I did the webinar. I wrote the webinar back in February. I launched it in February. It was okay, but it wasn't great. Hardly getting 5% conversions on warm traffic, on people that knew me. A good webinar, like, according to the top guys, 18% is like world class. When you're getting 18% conversion on the amount of people that show up. So let's say 100 people show up. If 18 people buy, and this is for a $2,000 price point. On a $2,000 price point, not where you book a call and sell, where you sell on the webinar. So you're asking people to take their credit cards out live. You got it. So I got it up to about 8% after a month or two. Then I realized this thing wasn't moving. So I had to I redid the entire webinar from scratch. I got a different course. I learned some new things. I redid it. All of a sudden it went up a little. I got a bump, but it wasn't where it needed to be. It was about 12, 13%.
Yep.
Kept showing up every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Over the summer, kind of stabilized around 13%. Every once in a while, I'd go up to 15%. All of a sudden in August, got it up to 20%. I'm like, okay, fluke night. We got lucky, tried it again. It did go back down, got it back up to 20%, 25%. Just last week, we did 25% again.
Nice.
So
nice.
This is where the payoff is. Now we actually just put it on evergreen traffic. So we actually had our first one on Monday night. We're at a team running the chat, but they used the replay for my best performing one. And we had a positive ROI. Now, the ROI wasn't good enough to scale the ad spend. It was a positive ROI. We need a 3 to 4x the ROI before we can really crank up the ad spend. And that might take us another couple months. Yeah. So I think I know the big lesson for people is like, you have to just pick one thing that you go all in on. And the reason that people can't grow is because they're doing too many things at once. So they get easily defeated. If I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel, my podcast, I'm trying to grow my email list, I'm trying to get my webinar going. Yeah, you're going to get quickly defeated. So what I recommend to our students is you pick one thing every 90 days. Let's
I
just
love
dial in
one thing.
one system in your business for the next. And even heck, if 90 days comes up and that one thing still isn't even optimized, then do that same thing for another 90 days. So let's say your closing percentage. Let's say you're still on a high ticket fitness program and your fitness program is $2,500 for 90 days. And right now your closing percentage is 30%. I would say, hey, over the next 90 days, all I want you to focus on is getting better at closing on the phone until you're at 60%. And then 90 days goes by, they're at 40%. Hey, are we going to do something new, coach? Nope. We're going to stay focused on this until you're at 60%. Coach, I'm at 50%. That must be good enough. Can we focus on something else? Nope. You're going to stay focused until you're closing your $2,500 program to 60% of people. And then we'll talk about something else. And that's why people don't grow, because they're chasing new and they're not chasing boring. This is why they're stuck. New is not the solution. All right. Boring is the solution. Breakthroughs come from the boring. And what's boring is just getting better. And because I know you're a big guy and you love lifting, it's like, how do you get a bigger back, right? From deadlifting. It's not doing fancy exercises. It's doing more reps and more weight on the bar. Adds volume. That's time under tension. It's time. It's the same exercise, but you're putting in more reps. You're getting better at those reps. So then you got to make the bar heavier. All right.
And managing it. I think that one thing that I want to bring back too is like when you talked earlier about ROI and like measuring, if you don't measure it, you won't manage it. And now that you're giving them a practice to start measuring this on a regular basis. So now they're managing of like where they're starting to see the figures change. And as you know, they're going into the 30, 40, just like you have changed from, 8% to 25, the fact that you're able to measure it, you've been able to manage it, and now you've been getting the results necessary. Do you agree?
Yeah.
And that's like the biggest thing. So as you continue to go and like say that somebody is like, they're 10 years, it's you 10 years ago, Vince, right? It's you 10 years ago.
Okay.
You're beginning, where you're getting started. What would you tell this younger version or somebody that's just getting started right now that has no clue of what they want, why they want it, or how to even get there?
Oh man, that means they're not good at anything. Here's where you get a vision. You can't impart a vision onto other people unless you have a vision, unless you've already experienced something that's worked for you. So the reason I could build, right? Like if you think about my business, No Nonsense Muscle Building, my very first ebook, why did that brand grow? Because that product was built around my own personal transformation. I was able to impart a vision onto other people because I had achieved something myself. So if you're here's the thing, you can't use language to cover up lifestyle. Right?
True.
You can't, you have to be the product of your message. Yep. Right? My fitness business coaching program took off because I'm a product of coaches and masterminds. I was selling something that served me. I wasn't selling something that I wasn't a product of. Same thing. Like my first ebook was how I transformed from skinny Vinny, a scrawny, wimpy pipsqueak who couldn't get the girl, 149 pounds, former long distance runner, worst genetics in the world, and how I gained 41 pounds of drug-free muscle in 6 months. And that was the brand. That was the story. So I think what I would encourage somebody to do, now that I've been a meanie, I'll be a nice guy. What I would encourage them to do is ask yourself 2 questions. What are you super passionate about? Like, what could you do the rest of your life for free? And 2, what are you credible on? What are your friends, not the experts in the industry, but what do just your friends and family come to you for advice on?
Yes.
And look for a problem that you've already solved in your own life. And ideally, it is quantifiable, right? So I gained 41 pounds in 6 months. So not something like I gained confidence, because you can't sell that, or, add, wellness to your life. It's like, how do you sell that? What's a quantifiable result that you've achieved in your own life? And if you don't have a quantifiable result that you've achieved in your own life, it'll be hard to create a program or promise around that, because like, what are people buying? People buy concrete. They don't buy concepts. So I think, yeah, I can't sell an 8-figure mastermind because I haven't built, an 8-figure. I've done more than 8 figures total. I haven't done 8 figures per year. I can't sell the 8-figure per year mastermind because I haven't done it myself. So maybe one day in a year or so, when we get there, I'll launch the 8-figure mastermind. But right now it's the 7-figure mastermind. So beautiful. That would be my advice to somebody.
Biggest experience. Yeah. So that's cool. It's like, sharing your own experiences, talking about your story.
Yeah.
Brother, you have this tremendous, appreciation of, really good relationships. You talked about, your relationship with Flavia, with your business. What really makes you laugh? What excites Vinny?
I like hanging out with just guys who are fun. I like going to see my buddy Sergio at his men's grooming salon called New York. And it's, it's a bunch of Italian guys, when they come out, hey, Vince, come stai? How you doing? Not too bad? Oh, good. I know life's kind of tough. I know it's tough. It's tough. I know what's going on with these freaking masks these days. What are they trying to do? It's a freaking cash trap. I like hanging out with guys that have know how to have fun. I like to hang out with guys that, don't get me wrong, I love hanging out with my entrepreneur friends. I love hanging out with my business buddies, and we don't have anything else to talk about, but I like talking about guys that, hey, you want to do a little bit, a little shot? We want to do a shot. Like, what are we doing? A little sambuca? Like, I like to have fun. So I like to hang out. Like this weekend, I'm going to wine country, Prince Edward County, with my wife and another couple. One of my daughter's friends' parents, they're European as well. They come over and we'll drink a couple bottles of wine together, and the kids are on the couch sleeping and we don't want to go home. We're like kids. We're going on a 3-day trip together. So
beautiful.
I like to live life. I like to have a plate of pasta. I like to go to a restaurant, have a couple of bottles of wine, have a nice little New York sour. I like to live. I like to laugh. Beautiful. I like movies. I'm a pretty simple guy. I do like to travel too. I know you're the guy to look at if you want to have the ultimate travel lifestyle. When you got kids, it's a little trickier, but I definitely would love to travel more. But I love culture. I grew up in an Italian family. I love culture. I love hanging out with my family. I wish, we could do it. We did it more often. As the families grow, it's tough to get everybody together, but yeah.
Beautiful, bro. And you know what, man, the travel, especially right now in these times, it's still possible. So for anybody out there that, we just got to make it happen. So, brother, you've, you show up in these massive power values, in your family and your business. How do they transcend into the culture that you give and pass down? We talked about, the DNA of our business starts basically with the leader. Is there something specific that you do, for anybody that is struggling with that conscious leadership? What is there a tactic that you do to pass that down so people feel your essence, your energy, so that they know, as you said that you empower your coaches, you trust them, things like this. How do you do, is there something that you do specifically, or is it those conversations, those cadence meetings to really pass down those values in your work?
Yeah. I'm constantly learning on, how to do this tactically, but at the end of the day, you don't want to, export anything that's not working in the home. Right. Yeah. So if I'm preaching relationships, I can't preach relationships to my team if I don't have a good relationship with my own wife and my kids. Yeah. So I think it starts inside the home. It starts with having a heart that cares. Right. Yeah. And how do you build a heart that cares? Maybe you feel like your heart's not even beating some days and it's just about the money and the growth and all this stuff. You have to go inward and think about, why am I doing this? And that requires some soul searching and, maybe getting around a different crowd of people that, value impact over income, and who could start, you have to really ask yourself, what do I value? Who do I want to be known for? Not what do I want to be known as doing, but who do I want to be known as for? Like, who, not your
Yeah.
who, not your what. So, I think with the team, it does come back to your values and your vision, right? Like my team trusts me, right? And I'm learning, how to, we have our Monday meetings, and then we have our quarterly meetings, and we have different rhythms of communication. But it really is like just understanding what it takes to build relationships. And to build a relationship, there has to be an emotional connection. And I think the problem is that most people are emotionally disconnected from their own feelings. And I'm one to speak. I'm talking about myself right now because, I've been, even to this day, it's the number one thing I need to work on is I'm emotionally disconnected to most people. And it's because I've had success without becoming emotionally connected to people. But now I'm seeing that's the number one thing that's preventing me from growing even further. Because if I can't emotionally connect with somebody, I can't truly find out what's going on in their life. And they won't be able to fully trust me and see that I truly do care, which prevents them from bringing their best self. So what's got me this far is also the thing that's preventing me from going further. And that was all revealed to me via my therapist as well. So that was another big, like, holy cow. So I never placed a value on emotional connection. Yeah. And being emotionally connected to people is what truly is like that ingredient, if you will, that will create that trust for them to want to go all in on you. To grow Absolutely. A brand, your team has to want to scale you, right? Yeah. If you look at like Dan Locke, 80 team members, every single person in his organization wants to scale Dan Locke. You look at Grant Cardone, every single person who works for Grant Cardone, they want to see Grant Cardone go to the top. Tony Robbins, every single person that works for Tony, they want to just see Tony go higher. They're not in it for themselves. You look at the, churches that grow, like they're all in it for Jesus. They want to see Jesus, his name spread through the world. Like they're all in it for the leader. So how do you get someone to go all in on you? Well, you have to have an emotional connection, and that's going to require conversation. And that was something that I was just like, I just saw people as projects. Hey, we need somebody who on the team who can produce this. It's just about producing and not what's actually going on in their personal life. So people will, you can get life out of people and you can get people to do good stuff for you. But I started to realize a trend in my own organization. I attracted good people, but I wasn't keeping good people for the long term. They'd come for, 2-3 years, 4 or 5 years, but then I couldn't take them further. And then my therapist, I just discovered all this in the last couple of months. And so Vince, because you don't emotionally connect people. So when your business is winning, like what's in it for them? Why would they be emotionally connected to the growth? They're not, which is why they go. It's not because they don't like you, but they don't feel a part of the growth. So this is a whole new world. Like I'm so excited about, like, I just want to go deep.
So powerful. And like one thing that, I hear, Tony say all the time, it's not you that grows your business, it's your team, right? It's that leverage. True. It's the ability to create that culture eats strategy for breakfast every single day of the week, right?
That's so true.
And I totally can resonate with what you're talking about, because it's been so like I've realized that's that shift from operator to owner, and the business now like continues to thrive because the team is just wants to see you succeed so badly, because they know that you care about them, and therefore vice versa, they care about you. Bro, you've given us such a beautiful path to success, man. And I just want to first and foremost just acknowledge that and thank you, because, I know your time is precious, and things like this is you just delivered so much great knowledge and content. I have one last question before we go is like, why do you think one reason why people, still fail?
They quit too quickly.
Yeah.
It's the number one reason. They give up on themselves. They hit their first roadblock and they quit. Yeah. It's like in a relationship, right? They get into the couple gets into their first, it's first of all, it's like the first time you meet the girl, right? She's perfect, right? Business is the exact same. The business, the niche, like it's just like relationships, right? It's the honeymoon phase, right? The first 3 months, the first year, it's perfect, right? It's like a brand new car. You want to drive it everywhere. But then all of a sudden you realize like, oh shoot, this person's got problems because you got problems, and then it's like,
it's a reflection, right?
Do we want to work through these problems? Yeah. So I think the number one reason that people fail is because they quit on themselves as soon as it gets tough. Mm-hmm. Like how else, think of it this way. If your students, like I know you're not quitting on your students. So if you're not quitting on your students, why would they fail? Like they just have to bring 51% to the table. You only need to bring 50%. And I think they don't understand that it's not your job to have to bring more to the table. They have to want this more than you do. Yeah. Like if your students don't want their own success as badly as you want the success for them, yeah, sure, they can have some quick wins, but they're never going to go the distance. Yeah. And that's the key. Yeah. The secret to success is to never, ever quit.
Hunger. I love it. Vinny, if there's anybody that is on here, listening live or comes back and is listening to the podcast, I'm going to throw everything in the show notes, but how can they, connect with you? Is there any resources that they can reach out to if they want to know more about the 6 or 7 figure, coach, mastermind? Let us know so I can throw everything in the show notes as well.
The best place to, by the way, thank you for that. The best way to personally connect with me is on Instagram at Vince Del Monte. You'll see my blue verified account. And they could also follow my podcast as well, the Vince Del Monte podcast show. And those are the 2 best spots.
Beautiful. Amazing. And I'll make sure I have those in the links available. And last bonus question, bro. If you had 3 days left to live, what would you do?
Dude, I hate these questions. I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I would hang out with the family, see what they want to do. They would come up with something. My family would come up with something. Probably, circle of blessing, share memories, and make sure everything's squared away. But I don't know what I would do. I'd ask my family, what should we do?
Amazing, brother. Do you have any final things that you want to share? Any final statements, brother?
No, man, you asked some great questions. I've been on a lot of podcasts. Those are some really thoughtful questions. I just think that, play the long game. I just see so many people get like, I don't want to go off on a rant here on the final notes here, but I know there's so much BS in this industry, and I see so many people just like comparing themselves to other people, who will post some income claim or something. And then I'll meet the person that runs all their stuff and it's like, oh, he's actually in major debt. And that was all cash contracted. And the default rate's already off the chart. He actually didn't do $1 million last month. He'll be lucky if they it's just, there's so much BS out there. I hear it every single day, or other guys who are like, oh yeah, we done $40 million. And like, they're not even at like half, not even 500K a month. And they just manipulate numbers. Like there's so many people with no conscience in this industry. And cause I'm like, why don't you work for so-and-so anymore? Like, man, I don't know how much I should tell you. I'm like, just tell me one thing. I'm like, okay, that's enough. I've heard enough. And like, I haven't been in this industry for so long. There's so much BS. So what I would just encourage your listeners to do is run their race. And just run your race and just show up for the people that need you and stop comparing, right? Just serve the people authentically every day, show up and just serve people, love on people and help people. And if you just do that, everything else will take care of itself. But I see so many people with so much potential, they just get easily defeated because they're comparing themselves and they don't even know what they're comparing themselves to. They think, I'm like, you actually are in better condition than those people over there that you're comparing yourself with. So, follow your truth and I trust your truth is rooted in serving people. And if your truth is rooted in serving people, you can't go wrong.
I love it, bro. Bless your heart, man. That was an epic way to close off the podcast. Everyone check out Vince online. Make sure to go follow him on Instagram. This gentleman is a legend. He's a dear friend of mine, and he's only showing up with heart and faith in the community. So much love to you, brother. I appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, brother. Thank you, man.